Absolutely not. That's why you can't search his understanding. So that is, you can't try. Thank God for the things we know. There are many things we still don't know. All right, so we are at the great battle. And so the Philistine came. He's about 10 feet. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and his arm was, oh God. You know, I don't know why that picture just bothers me. Because later you read that when David killed Goliath, he carried the head. Now that kind of head you can't carry. Just read your scripture. He carried the head to Jerusalem. Took it there. Okay, he had a bronze helmet on his head. And he was armed with a coat of mail. And verse 8, he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourself and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and who had 8 sons, and the man was old, advanced in years, in the days of Saul. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had gone to follow Saul to the battle. The names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest, and the 3 oldest followed Saul. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep in Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near and presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. And Jesse said to his son David, take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp. And carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. So David rose up early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, took the things and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. I mean, look, they were set ready for battle, but they never engaged each other. Simple reason was because Goliath changed the rules in the middle of the game. And the question that I want to leave with you and probably not answer is, what do you do when you're in business and dollar now costs $2.12 to the naira? That's changing the game, the rules in the middle of the game. Can we close and go home? No, so that next week you will come with an answer. Remember what I said at the beginning. Perfect conditions. If you have to wait for them, you would never make any move in your life. Whether it's getting married, true or false, the best wedding I've ever conducted in my life happened in Kaduna. The young man and the lady were starting off in life, and they couldn't even afford to buy a wedding dress. So they came to me and said, Pastor, will you join us? I said, I can join you on Sunday, somewhere between the message and in between the service. We'll join you. No reception. So they came on Sunday. We gave them a special seat. And in the course of the service, we called both of them forth. And family members were there. And we joined them in church. preached my sermon. We gave God praise. We went home. They didn't even provide cabin biscuit and treetop. Ask your neighbor, do you know treetop? They don't know. Phone shot, do you know treetop? That's what some of us grew up on. When you were going to secondary school, you had a bottle of treetop and cabin biscuit. They could not even provide that. But 2 years down the line, God bless them tremendously. And I call that the best wedding because they didn't care what anybody thought. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They just did what they needed to do. I've seen people wait on end. Who's that? Leo? Where is he? Now that he's a You Win awardee, he will soon print complete. If you use You Win money to marry. So what happens when the rules of the game, the rules are changed in the middle of the game? What do you do? Because they were ready. Look, read scripture. They were set in battle array until Goliath showed up. All right. Let's read on. I'm sure we'll just stay with point 1 today, and I don't know what's going to happen because we have one of our facilitators next week, I think. Or is it this week? It's next week. But we'll see how we can just juggle things around. So David, in verse 20, rose early in the morning, and he left the sheep with the keeper. And he took the things and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle army against army. And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, ran to the army and came and greeted his brothers. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines, and he spoke according to the same word. So David heard them, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. This was 40 days. So the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in this manner, say, so shall it be done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men. And Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? Two armies are set against one another. The champion of one steps out and he demands a champion from the other camp. And the camp of Israel, representing God's people, who should be strong and confident in their God, would flee away every time Goliath showed up. But here comes a 17-year-old boy by the name David, who saw what I will call a niche in the midst of fear, confusion, threat, he saw what? A niche. What is a niche? A niche simply, or one of the synonyms that can be used, is an opening or an opportunity. Are you with me? When last did you spot an opportunity? When last did you see a niche? Do you see niches? No, it's food for thought. Because those who must make a headway in life, and those who must be mountain takers and must represent this kingdom, or this glorious kingdom of God, must be niche spotters. When last did you spot an opportunity? Let me use two examples to buttress this. Examples that are outside our climb. Some of them, or one is way back dated in the 19th century and one is recent. I mentioned the name Richard Branson, who today is the CEO and owner of Virgin Airlines. And I'll tell you a little bit about Virgin Airlines and what made Virgin Airlines find a space within the domination of British Airways. Because British Airways literally dominated the United Kingdom airspace. And they were offering service to a broad spectrum of clients. But what did Richard Branson see that those within the aerospace industry did not see? One, or simply put, he saw an opportunity to offer cheaper fares at a premium, and for a generation that were younger and basically upcoming. Are you getting what I'm saying? If you've ever flown Virgin Airways, you will find out that those who fly it are within, even in their what you call first class cabin, are usually within their 48, 50s downwards. You wouldn't find the older generation flying it. So he began to offer services to people who you may call wannabes. Do you get what I'm saying? Who want to fly first class but can't afford first class fees in British Airways, but for maybe 60% or 40% discount, they themselves can say, I belong. Are you getting what I'm saying? So he saw a niche and he leveraged that niche, and today you can't deny his space in the airline industry. Ask your neighbor, have you found your own niche? Let me speak about Henry Ford and the driving force behind Ford Motors and what has made it a name that you can't deny. Even in Nigeria today, there's Ford. Ford's dream was not to provide motor vehicles for rich people. It was to provide motor vehicles for the masses. Those who belong to the working class, so to speak. Those who lived and bought their homes on mortgages and who basically served what you call the economy. You know, that those who serve the economy, that those who the economy serves. I hope I'm not speaking strangely. Those who serve the economy are those who run the rat race. Are you in the rat race? You know, those who are in the rat race are those who you come out of school as a youth copper, you get a job, you work that job for maybe 40 years, you trusting for a pension that doesn't exist because they've stolen the money. Are you getting what I'm saying? And then you get a parting clock when you retire. I'm told they don't give clocks anymore. They give you a refrigerator. When you retire, they give you all kinds of gifts, and then you then have to queue up to receive your pension, and eventually you die in the queue. It's called the rat race. You live on barely get along street. You just survive through life. And I pray that will not be your portion. Because that's not the will of God concerning you. So whereas other people were making automobile for those who could afford it, he decided to make it cheap, affordable. He saw a niche or an opening in the masses. And what did he do? He took advantage of that niche. What am I saying? If you can find the right niche, it becomes what you can leverage in order to not only provide, as it were, meet the needs of people, but it will cause you to rise up above others financially. It's about finding what? The niche. What happens in Nigeria is what you call the low-cost effect. So, when someone finds a new field, okay, word spreads around that that's the easiest way to make money. So every what is moving market. So everybody rushes in there. It's called the low-cost effect. So very soon everybody's doing what? Hello? Talk to somebody. Said something. Selling pure water or starting a pure water factory. So now there is a glut. There are too many pure water factories and the people cannot sell. Are you getting what I'm saying? But do you know that even in the water provision industry, there is a niche there that nobody has seen? Talk to me, someone. There's a niche that nobody has seen. You say, what's the niche? I don't know. I'm not interested in pure water. So I don't pray in that direction. But you may be able to spot that niche. And do you know that in every field, even when armies have set themselves and they look like a massive army and they speak fear to you, you can have the spirit of a David and still find your niche and be able to leverage that niche. Now, a niche, like we see here, doesn't even look like much, because many times it's just an idea. And what is an idea? An idea is a thought that has a future but exists only in your mind and in space. Who has ever held an idea in his hand? You say, Pastor, if you have an idea, I want to give it to you. Take. And you receive. What did you receive? You receive an idea by faith, but I gave you nothing. But yet, what exists in your mind and in space that has a hope for a future, if you can incubate it, can become a reality that will separate you from those who do not see a niche in life. Is somebody getting what I'm saying today? Okay. So ask your neighbor, when last did you see a niche? Okay. Let's look at 1 Samuel 17 again. We read verse 2. And I just want to show you, or probably strengthen something here. 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 2. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah and drew up in battle array. I mentioned that earlier. The Philistines stood on one side of the mountain and Israel on the other side, with a valley between them. Both camps were ready to confront one another. Israel was not ready for Goliath. If Goliath had not showed up, they would have fought. Because this wasn't Saul's first battle. Are you getting what I'm saying? They fought. But what came out that looked 10 feet tall was actually a niche. No, I don't think you're getting it. What came out taller than everybody else was an opening. But the opening was a fearful opening. You saw it. And if you don't have the mind of the Spirit, you will see that as a threat and not as an opening. But it would take a David and who would see 10 feet and hear him shout, and everybody else is running, and he say, don't you guys see what I'm seeing? Can't you guys see that this is an opportunity for increase? That's why he asked, and he said, look, what will be given to the man who kills this giant? And they said to him, well, he will believe tax-free. He will be given riches. And he will live tax-free. And he will marry the king's daughter. Even if nothing moved David. Marry the king's daughter. Look, I can also show you something. Saul was king. David was not. Look, forget the riches. Forget my father's house being tax-free. If the king is my father-in-law, did you see the wedding of President Jonathan's first daughter? How many cars did she get? 80 something? See, you marry and you start a car dealership. Do you get what I'm saying? You just marry, and that same day you are calling your lawyer to say, go and register Chijioke and Sons, Motors Enterprises, and you take 80 brand new cars, each one probably costing nothing less than 5 million naira. I'm trying to show you how the promises that the niche that nobody else sees carries. It brings deliverance to your family from poverty. Because even if you don't want to be blessed financially, God wants you blessed not because of you, but He wants you blessed because you don't exist in isolation. Joseph said, what you plan for evil, God had a plan. He sent me so that I will preserve a posterity, because the 12 sons of Jacob must become 12 tribes and must become a nation. Have you ever seen yourself as the Joseph of your family? The one who goes in first so that every other person can follow. How do you see yourself? David said, you guys are not seeing what I'm seeing. I see a niche. I see an opening. I see something I can leverage in order to change who I am. And what happened to him afterwards? Did he get the king's wife? Daughter. David changed location because he got an automatic pass to Asurok. He was constantly in and out. Saul said, who is this lad? Who is his father? I need him by my side. We need to pray that God will clear the cobwebs around us in the things we do. Every single one of us in our fields, in our areas of endeavor, that we will see what nobody else is seeing. We will see our own niche, and we'll be able to leverage that thing that may not make sense to anybody else, because David did not make sense, not even to his brothers. Said, how can you be asking that kind of question? We know you. You're insolent. You're naughty. You just came to spy. David said, there is a cause. I don't know how to explain it, but I see a niche. Separate yourself from this low-cost, swarming effect where all people are listening. So what's waiting the move market now? Do you get what I'm saying? Well, you want to move there? Recharge card. I hope someone is being blessed today. 10-feet tall Goliath. You must have a heart of courage. You must say to yourself, I fear nothing. You must be willing to look fear in its face and say, fear, I know who you are. False evidence appearing real. You're just an acronym that tries to dissuade me from laying hold. You're just false evidence, but you appear real. But I can take you on. Fear and faith don't cohabit in the same person or in the same house. You need to do away with fear and hold on to faith. Is somebody getting what I'm saying? And that leads me to the second point. 1 Samuel chapter 17. We're still there. Number 2, you need to leverage your faith. Faith and fear don't cohabit. They don't walk hand in hand. The truth is that as human beings, there are certain things that confront us daily. Fear confronts us daily. Right now, I looked online. I was told today that there are no flights out of Abuja from the 12th, from the 11th, 12th, 13th. All flights are fully booked. I went online to check British Airways. 11, 12, 13th. You'll see one seat left. What do you think is going on? What did you call it? Andrew. Oh, Andrew, I'm checking out. So Andrew is leaving. I'm not saying we shouldn't be cautious. There's a level of fear that can so grind you to a halt and will make your mind not think right. Look, fear. People don't function right under fear. Have you ever been in a situation of fear? Could you think clearly? You just get paralyzed. Look, IBB, I don't know whether he still does, I think he still does, had this stuffed lion in the forecourt of his house. When you say stuffed lion, in motion, with all the teeth in place, was not real. One day, this Alaji went there, opened the front door. I think he probably was having a conversation, so he didn't notice. When he saw the lion, he began to pee. Look, an old man, all his bladder just let go. His bowels began to release. And he could not move. The lion made no sound, but it was just in that position. That tells you that fear will stop you dead in your tracks. Oh Lord. I remember once we took the children to London Zoo. And I went to where the lions were. And having seen Jos Zoo, where you see them in cages, there was no cage. My wife would laugh. But there was a gully like made out of concrete. And it was done in such a way that you could stand. If you were far, it looked like the lions could jump out to you. So when I saw that, my wife and my sister-in-law were somewhere, and I went and I said, I've seen the lions, but there's no cage. The way they grab you, have you seen where parents, you grab one child with one hand, another, you leave the child's legs are not even touching, and you are just moving. The lion had not been seen. They only heard the testimony that there's no cage here. Fear paralyzes people. It will stop you dead in your tracks. And that's exactly what was happening in Israel. 10-footer confronting Israel every day. Bring your best man. This is not about army to army. Bring your best. I am here. They looked at him. They said, oh God. They even forgot God. He was cursing the armies of Israel by his gods, and there was no response. For 40 days. And I'm sure they were fasting. I just thought 40 because for 40 days, I'm sure they were on the mountain fasting and nobody could make a move. Until a young boy came. Please listen to me. And I will close here today. A young boy whose faith had been developed in the wilderness. And I want to say certain things to you. So let me use certain practical examples. The development of faith is very critical. Years ago when I used to preach, I used to use this phrase when I began to preach. If you've never believed God for 100,000 naira, you can't believe him for 10 million. And I explain what I mean. You've trusted God to meet. You've never trusted God to meet 100,000 naira need. You've never seen it happen. Then you wake up one day. I'm a millionaire. I see 10 million coming. From where? How? Has your faith ever been exercised? Has it ever been put to work? What you don't use, you lose. Whether it's an arm that can get atrophied and become redundant because it's not used, or a brain that is not used creatively to think creatively, or what? Even the heart that is not exercised regularly will begin to suffer defects in old age. Do you know what it's like for you to go on 10 days dry fast? And then when you're finally breaking the fast, okay, not even dry, wet fast. And the day you're breaking the fast, you ask for yam, fried egg, plantain, and for dessert, coconut. What's going to happen to you? If you don't die, it is God that didn't kill you. But I can tell you, you end up in a hospital. Simple reason, for those 10 days, your digestive system has been inactive. For you to begin to engage it, you have to do it with, thank you, small. You start with pap. Using natural things to teach you spiritual things. Because sometimes we think, can just jump up, I will be as rich as Aliko. From where? It is possible, but your faith would need to be developed. And for faith to be developed, it would need to be tested. So after David had made all the noise and he had done, what do you call it? Shakara. They took him to Saul. Well, 40 days we've been here. There's one small boy that said he can kill the giant. They brought David because there was no solution. A man that spots a niche becomes the celebrated one. At least he says, I've seen something. Saul said, let's hear what he has seen. So they bring him to Saul. And David said to him, this uncircumcised Philistine has been cursing the armies of the living God. I can take him on. Saul said, let me tell you something, young boy. That guy is a warrior from his youth. How did he know? You see what fear? Fear will cause you to give credit to things. And all of that will be from the figment of your own imagination. He's been a man of war from his youth. Did Goliath submit his CV to Saul? Talk to me, someone. I mean, did he say, well, here's my CV? And he read it and said, wow. He went to Sandhurst Military College in the United Kingdom. There was nothing. That's what happened to the children of Israel when they went to spy the land. And they saw the sons of Anak. And they said, when we saw them, we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. Did they ask the giants, how do you see us? And the giants said, we see grasshoppers. They never did. They just said, look at these guys, look at us. We're grasshoppers. And then they said, when we now looked at our own selves, with our own eyes, even we saw grasshoppers. At the mouth of two witnesses, every word is established. That's what fear does. So I'll tell you something about fear. Just to buttress fear. As young children, I remember in 1972, we were living in a house in Kaduna that you stepped in, you had a large living room, then you had a corridor. My parents' bedroom was at the end. There was a guest bedroom here. Our bedroom was the first you saw. We had a double bunk, as kids. It was white. And it had a dismantleable ladder. So we would take the ladder, put it at the end of the wall, put a football at the top, and wear a garment for it. So it's at the end, and we will be at this end. We will turn off the light, and we will dare ourselves to see who would walk straight and go and remove the head from that thing. None of us did. Something we made ourselves. We made it ourselves. We placed it there ourselves. And none of us dared in the dark. You say why? Because as children, we watch certain horror movies that enabled us to build our own horror movie. So, I used to be very daring and adventurous, and sometimes my brother and sister would just, never successfully remove that ball from that ladder in the dark. Many of the things we fear and situations we're afraid of are things we can overcome if we will starve our fears, and we will step out in faith. So here comes David. He's been a man of war from his youth. You're just a lad. So David said, Sir, I was keeping my father's sheep. Before you can kill Goliath, you must have killed a bear and a lion. Goliath is more dangerous than the bear and the lion. I was keeping my father's sheep, and I'm trying to show you. I'll close it with a couple of statements and the old help. I was keeping my father's sheep, and here came a bear, here came a lion, and I pursued the bear. I pursued the lion. I grabbed it by its beard, I killed it, and I delivered the lamb. He said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? He's no different from the bear. He's no different from the lion. See, when you've killed a lion, you become emboldened in your faith. What am I trying to say? When you've trusted God for that 100,000 naira and he comes, you then say, I can believe him for 1,000,000. I can believe him for 10 because I've seen him and I've proved him faithful. You can leverage on your faith, leverage on past experiences. When Paul says, I am persuaded that neither life nor death, nor things present, nor things to come can separate me from the love of God, he's seen himself in near-death situations. And he's seen the deliverance of God. That's why I say, I don't think about death. I can't die. Even when he came to the point of death, he said, look, I finished my work. It's time to go. But you see, I'm confused. Because to be present with you is more beneficial to you. But to be absent with you is to be with the Lord. I don't know. Should I stay with you guys or should I go home? That's the way to die. Not on that trailer. They said, he just said he was going to the village. And they are calling to say, do you know who has this phone number? That will not be your portion. The name of Jesus. Here's where I want to close. How will you develop your faith if you're not a risk taker? If you're not going to try some stuff, if you're not going to do some things, if you're not going to step out of your own comfort zone, if you're going to keep waiting for favorable conditions, Ecclesiastes says, he that looks to the clouds will not sow. And he that looks to the wind will not sow. Because when you're planting wheat, it's so light, you scatter. So if you're waiting for, say, okay, where's the wind? Is it blowing this way? Or is it blowing into another man's field? So say, let me wait until the wind changes direction. And that day the wind doesn't change direction, you miss a sowing season. You just must, some will fall in your neighbor's field. That's fine. But a majority will fall in your own field. Do you know what that means? Don't be afraid. When your efforts benefit others, because no man is an island. You want to hold everything together. You can't be what God or make that difference. Don't be intimidated or afraid that somebody else is going to this field is going to be better than better by what you're doing. You should actually be glad that somebody else. If you don't try, step out. You never develop your faith. Somebody, or a general expression has been that we learn from experiences. You can't take that away. Sometimes we learn good lessons. Other times we learn bad lessons. But either way, we learn.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I want to close. If you think you only learn when you succeed, you don't understand God, His kingdom, and life. And I think our minds have been wrongly programmed. A child learns to walk by falling. One of the constant talks I've been having with my first daughter is how to hear God. This afternoon we spoke and she said, do you know when God is speaking to you? And I referred her to certain books, but I said this to her. One of the ways by which we learn to hear God is when we've disobeyed Him. I'll tell you how. You go to the market and you want to buy an item. And there's a nudging in your spirit not to buy it. But you decide to buy it. You take it back home. Then you realize that you bought a bad product. Only to check the receipt. And the store has a horrible refund policy. No refunds. That's like, and then you say, you know when I was buying it, something was saying, don't buy. And I had a classical example today. I went to renew my passport. Pick up my passport tomorrow. Okay, so I wanted a 64-page passport because I get a passport 2 years, all the pages are expired. So I went and Mrs. Osman, who's a member of this church, gave me expedited service. And then I applied for a 64-page passport. I paid for a 64-page passport. Every document in that file was for a 64-page passport. When I sat before the guy who was to capture me, I felt I needed to say to him, this is for a 64-page passport. I said to myself, every document says 64, 64, 64. Why should I say 64 and make the guy feel like, do I want him to say, you think I don't know my job? So I kept quiet. 5 o'clock, my phone rings. Mrs. Osman, Pastor, I must apologize to you. They issued you a 32-page passport. So what do we do? They said they will refund the money. They said they'll put money together. They said they will redo it again at their own expense. I should come back again and take picture. I said, me. Well, stay 2 hours there again or 1 hour trying to take picture. Just give me my 32-page passport. So even today, so next time, when I'm sitting, say, do you mind checking that file again? 64 I want, not 32. That's how we learn. Tell somebody, get ready to step out in faith. That's the way to developing strong faith. Stand on your feet.